If you're in the room as a leader and you truly believe that you have all of the answers, I would question your leadership. My one leadership approach is just get your hands dirty. Get with the field, get with your sellers, get on the manufacturing floor. It doesn't matter what company you work for, get with the team. At the core of leadership is authenticity and transparency. If you as a leader are genuine in your communication and candid about both your successes and your challenges, you will build trust beyond anything that you've ever seen in your teams.
Is there a framework for leaders or something that we have to even look for to become the great leader?
There's a couple things I'll touch on here. One,
Hey Teri, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Can't complain. Recovering from a bad flu, but I think I'm getting there. So Teri, I want to kick this off by asking about your journey. I'm super curious. You've been working with amazing organizations. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you end up in sales and then obviously enablement?
Yes, happy to. So I started out in sales, quota-carrying rep for 10 years. Back in those days, it was actually where your manager's riding along with you in the car. You're making cold calls. You've got your account list. So you're really doing everything from the BDR role all the way through the CS role. You're owning both the new logo portfolio, the renewal, the expansion, and great experience. I certainly appreciate everything that I learned during that journey because I've been able to apply that in my leadership role, both in enablement and just as a leader. That drives a lot of the credibility and empathy that I think I can bring to that function. But while I was in my, I want to say 11th year, the SVP of sales for the organization tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you should actually consider training and competency, which is what it was called back in those days. And I remember saying to him, I don't really think I'm going to be good at that. And he said, no, I think you'd be surprised because you're the one that we always tap into when we say, hey, can you go teach the teams how to do this or to do that or talk through your process? So that was really the platform when I launched into enablement. And what's been fun about the journey is each of the organizations that I've been at, I've had such great leaders who I've formed these incredible, longstanding, I would say, mentorships with. Most of which have been able to pull me to the next organization or the next org and apply what I've learned or connected me to others to really highlight, hey, these are things that worked really well. I think what I would say is both being at startups and enterprise, it's a different motion. They're all very unique experiences from coming in and actually designing enablement from the ground up. We don't have it. What does it look like? What is the strategy? What's the charter? What's the operating model? Build out the team to come in and transform the team that exists and realign it to the go-to-market strategy or help us scale what we have. And so it's been unique at every single organization, but been a very fun journey.
It's amazing. Like I would say, of course, it sounds like you had great leaders and you work with amazing organizations, but it's definitely your leadership and your ability to embrace change from being a seller to a leader. And then people, recognize some things and you took the shot because so many people might not do it and said, look, I'm comfortable in the position I am, not because I'm not able to move elsewhere, because I enjoy, what I'm really good at. I'm making money. I'm making a difference for my own team. But this is what I'm hearing from many other leaders on the show that, hey, I switched to enablement not only for the experience, maybe sometimes it happens even randomly, but the fact that I could grow a little bit, differently, start like impacting my reps' life, sometimes even your client facing. And this is just a different experience completely. So it sounds like, again, you walk the walk and you've been around enablement for long enough to have a good reason to stay in enablement. So I'm really curious to understand that reason for Teri specifically.
Well, I think I'll tie back to something you just said. I think a lot of leaders, or I would say just individuals, we miss opportunities because we don't we don't believe in ourselves. That's the truth. And there are plenty of times when leaders will come alongside you and they see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And when those situations occur, I encourage people to trust that. A lot of people are just afraid to take the risk. It's, well, what if I don't do well? What if I fail? Well, what if you don't? What if you don't fail? What if you do an amazing job? It's about taking the chance and believing in the people who believe in you. That is so important, because whether it's sales or enablement or manufacturing, it doesn't matter what the job is. Everything's about people. I just had this conversation with a leader I reported into not that long ago, who called out a couple different things and said, Teri, I don't think you're looking at the full scope of your influence in an organization. And I would really encourage you to go look at X, Y, and Z. And it was a great conversation. Even this late in my career, it was great to have another leader calling out some things that maybe it wasn't that I didn't see them, but maybe I didn't believe I was ready, and in reaffirming that. So when you say, well, why do you stay in it? I stay in it for the people. I stay in it for the magic of watching the transformation that not only happens with the individuals in the organization, but with the organization itself. And, I'll get a little bit philosophical, but if we think about, you think about your life journey, we spend so much time with the people in our role, working with the people on a daily basis. And if you look at how many hours you're allocating towards work and your home life, it's really important to believe that you can make an impact in those individuals' lives beyond just the work that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, when you're no longer doing that work, and quite frankly, when you're no longer even here on this earth, it's about, like, how did you impact people? Like, what kind of change did you drive? Was it meaningful? Because nobody cares about your title. Nobody does. They don't care about the program that you rolled out. Yes, every business is looking at driving revenue, but there is such a human element to what we do. And so connecting to the people and finding ways to leverage your strengths. What are your individual leadership strengths, and how can you use those to drive a better environment at different organizations that lead to revenue outcome? Yes, that's important, but the people are really key.
I love this. Look, based on my experience, based on my tiny experience compared to you, best leaders are the most humble, and they don't even know their superpower.
Correct.
So even in your case, like, someone reminded you, you're doing it. You're not, maybe you don't recognize it yourself, but you're doing it.
Yes.
But the fact that you take that chance, you started, and you build that leadership skill. Like, yes, like internally, to me, you should be a good human being. If you're staying in leadership position for long, and you still enjoy it, and you're still in shape, and if still you're happy and you have your life together,
Yes.
it means you're looking for more than just a title.
Correct.
You're looking more than recognition.
Correct.
But your skill set, it requires a lot of practice.
It does.
And I want to hear from your perspective. Look, I know you're an athlete. I know you have this energy in you to do so many things.
Yes.
I follow your journey.
There's a little bit of that going on, yes.
So I would like to learn about your leadership skill. Okay, someone recognized and said, Teri, you're great. I said, okay, maybe, I should take, this advice and start in this role. But tell me about your journey. You've been around, for long enough to see changes during over the past couple of years, like with all this transformation that is happening around us, with different work culture, different teams, different challenges.
Right.
Is there a framework for leaders, or isn't like something that we have to even look for to become the great leader?
Yeah, I there's a couple things I'll touch on here. One, I would say early in my career, when I looked at the leaders that I was reporting into, I always assumed that they had all the answers. And I believed that they were the ones that were going to come forward when I had the question and just help me understand, no, Teri, this is the answer and this is what we're going to do. And, you're going to be the expert. You're the fixer. You're the person with the grand plan. And what what I realized very thankfully very early in my career, John Durant actually is one of the leaders that taught me this, is leaders don't have all of the answers. The really good leaders don't have all the answers. And what's even more important about that is I deeply respect John. And I remember him standing in front of the room, in front of a lot of other leaders, as well as myself and my team, answering the question with, I don't know. I don't know. And then he turned to the rest of the team and really leaned in. That was a really vulnerable moment. But what he said next was absolutely a mindset shattering moment, because he asked the question, what do you think? And so he was empowering everybody in the room to lean in and say, it's okay that you don't have the answer. And I think there's a ton of analogies out there, but if you're in the room as a leader and you truly believe that you have all of the answers, I would question your leadership. Yes, we are proficient, we are practitioners, and we have honed our craft, but we don't have all the answers. And we should, as a leader, be working with our team to empower them to come forward with ideas, because I have found over the course of my career the most meaningful outcomes to, whether it was an enablement initiative or a leadership planning session, the most meaningful outcomes have come from those situations where other people who may have not been the expert on that topic have actually brought a different viewpoint. And being confident enough in your conviction to say, I have a different idea. I don't even know if this idea is going to resonate or land, or if it's even a good idea, but I'm going to share it anyhow. I'm going to be vulnerable enough to say, I have an opinion on this and I want to share it because I'm curious. And that is something great leaders do in situations where they are truly empowering their teams. You asked another question around the framework, and I know that I just wrote about that on LinkedIn. And it really was, again, very specifically, a lot of the things I write about are from my experiences over the last 25 years. And in that situation, that framework was around the Sakichi Toyota 5 Whys. And the reason I was writing about that is because I remember very explicitly being at an organization and having the leadership team come to me and say, our sales team is broken. And when I asked the question, what's broken? Nobody could give me a specific answer about what actually is broken. What they did do is say, we're investing in a new sales methodology and we want you to roll it out, not just in the US, but globally. Okay, why? Again, nobody could give me the answer of what we're truly trying to solve for and help me understand the correlation between what's broken and why we really believe that the sales team is broken. I'm going to guess that most people listening to this are going to, assert pretty quickly, well, then it probably didn't work. And that's the correct answer. The investment of $1.5 million was a complete failure. And it was a complete failure because we didn't actually know what we were fixing. We didn't go to the root cause. And that's one of the things I talk about in my framework. The 5 Whys is all about getting out of the boardroom and getting on to, whether you want to call it getting into the sales floor or onto the showroom, into the manufacturing floor. You need to reserve your perspective as a leader and put that over to the left, and then actually get with the team that's doing the work and understand from their perspective what's working, what's not working. Roll your sleeves up, get dirty, just get in the moment, shadow them, find out what they're doing. Oftentimes there's a couple of things that come out of that process. One, you're building your own leadership credibility because they actually see that you care and you're trying to understand. Seeking to understand is so key in leadership. 2, you're going to start identifying things that are going to actually break your original perspective. You're going to find the truth, or at least a much closer truth than what you found in the boardroom. Because the reports tell you one thing, but the people aspect tells you a completely different story. So I would say, without question, my one leadership approach is just get your hands dirty. Get with the field, get with your sellers, get on the manufacturing floor. It doesn't matter what company you work for, get with the team.
It's very fascinating. First and foremost, about the example you shared, that we kill curiosity so easily by
Yes.
trying to prove that we know everything. So if the guy knows everything, he's the god. Let
Yeah.
him just make all the decisions. Why would I even take the risk,
Yeah.
say something stupid? And sometimes we see, like especially with small startups, some of the best ideas are the most stupid ideas at first, because
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to talk about them because they're scary, they're
Right.
different.
Right.
And to your point, a leader who let other people take that shot, take that chance just to share. Like maybe it doesn't work out, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but we have this culture of openness that you can share whatever comes to mind, which
Mm-hmm.
is really rare, especially when you pass certain size as a company, a certain stage, because we
Mm-hmm.
got, bureaucracy, we got, again, our titles getting in the way. But
Yes.
I love that story because it shows like you were dealing with a great leader. And what I think, and maybe I'm off base and correct me, he built another leader like himself by showing, by
Mm-hmm.
being the example.
Mm-hmm.
I let you guys talk, and Terry picked it up, and you most probably apply the same approach when you have your own managers or directors
Mm-hmm.
in a group setting.
Yes.
For the second perspective, you mentioned something really, really interesting. Get your hands dirty. Go talk to people, do the discovery, understand the root cause. If you don't know and you just see another shiny object, whether it's a tool or a methodology,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not the first one sharing this, like in this podcast specifically, another company, they invested $2.5 million in
Mm-hmm.
command the message. And it was a complete failure
Yeah.
because you don't even know the main reason of that problem. And
Right.
you're trying just to bring something that works for someone else in completely maybe different setting, and because it turned to standard, let's just bring them, hopefully all of our problems will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a question about this though. Just imagine as an enablement personnel, when your CRO or CEO or whomever comes in and says, hey, this is it, we're going to roll this out, and they might fail,
Mm-hmm.
they might fail, but at the same time you don't want to overstep. How would you really communicate and shed a light without overstepping, by giving them a guidance of like, hey, go do more discovery,
Mm-hmm.
go before you jump the gun. I know you made your decision already, so
Right.
it's already signed. I get
Right.
it, but maybe you want to think about other aspects. How would you do that?
Right. I love your question because here's the reality. This happens all the time. It happens all the time, and any enabler that's listening to this podcast will shake their head in agreement. So there's a couple of things. One, I'll tell you the main thing is know the source of your truth. You're hired for your role because of your expertise. So know that coming into the conversation, you have a perspective that they hired you for. And that should give you the confidence to have a different conversation. And that conversation needs to be very simply, yes, I understand that whatever it is, we're going to roll this out. But before we do that, here's some things that I need to understand. So if we're looking at through the lens of enablement, number one, why are we doing this and how does this align to our go-to-market strategy? That's first. How do you see enablement supporting that initiative in terms of changing behavior within the organization to drive those business outcomes? So that's part two. And that's a meaty and a long, that's something you really need to sit down and think about. And it's usually the most thought provoking question because then the leader's coming back to you saying, well, again, whatever it is, we're looking at, maybe it's as simple as we want to improve our win rates. Maybe it's, changing our direction, our strategy, and going into new verticals. Maybe it has to do with your conversion rates and really driving impact. Getting to understanding the key business outcomes that they are trying to drive is so critically important. And then going through that framework, you can look at the Sakichi Toyota framework again, asking the questions around why are we doing this? What is the business outcome you see enablement actually affecting? How does enablement actually fit in the context of solving for that? And then, even more importantly, what does that look like during the rollout, during the actual building of momentum and driving that, not just the behavior change, but the change management that goes along with that. How do we think about this in terms of scaling it, measuring it, iterating on the insights? Because I believe there was a question that we talked about prior to actually doing the podcast, and it was around that behavior change. In most leadership teams, I think you asked the question, where do you see leaders failing the most? It's rolling too many things out and not thinking through the implications of that. There are massive amount of implications when we're just trying to do too much. There's a whole concept of slowing down to speed up and being really intentional about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to affect, how we're actually going to see and build that muscle memory through that experience, and how are we going to measure whether or not it's successful. But most things don't work the first time. So you've got to be able to have that context to go back and say, okay, these are the things that are working. These are the things that are not working. What do we need to do from an enablement scope? What do we need to change? What does the organization maybe need to change? What messaging may need to change? What segmentation strategy might need to change? It's not just in the context of enablement. There's so many pieces to any kind of rollout that transcend beyond enablement, and being confident to ask those questions and make sure you understand the full scope and then you bring those insights back is so important.
This is really, really interesting and relevant to what we are dealing with today, AI. So a lot of people got FOMO. Like, I'm a vendor. I can tell you, like 3 years ago, it was a different story. Everybody wanted to be careful and cautious, and let's take our time. Yeah. Right now, I see a new wave. Everybody wants a piece of something shiny. Like it reminds me of like old days when you think of like Salesforce and cloud solutions overall. People, when things started to pick up, I want a piece of this too. Like, sounds amazing. But I always say, hey, let's just take a step back, look at the company, your organization as a whole. Let's look at people, process. Let's look at your culture. Maybe change management is really needed if you're looking at implementing this piece of software, not only as just a fancy tool, but something that can help with transformation, true transformation. Now, I want to hear from your perspective. You are in the trenches right now as well. The company you are working with, you guys are pushing AI as well. So as a leader and former seller, I'm really curious to hear your perspective. What is one part that you fight to keep from AI taking over?
Love the question and happy to answer it. Sales is not just about process and pipeline. It goes back to people. And the thing that I would say I'm going to continue to fight to keep is the magic that really happens in the unspoken moments. And what I mean by that is when you're actually listening to sellers in the call and you're listening to the hesitation, for instance, that a buyer has after they've been asked a tough question, or the excitement that the seller has after their conversation and they finally get the deal, or the trust is being built in a very well-placed, I call them the powerful pause. AI is very good at automating, forecasting, optimizing, but what AI cannot do, it cannot connect like a human can. It can't read the room. It can't pivot on instinct. It can't build trust. It can't build rapport. And that's the soul of sales. That's the soul of people in general. So we need to fight to keep the human element of it, because authenticity cannot be replaced by AI.
This is really powerful, but I want to ask you a question, because I'm with you, by the way. We are fighting the same fight, 100%. Yes. But I often think about this, like, are we going to lose this human connection at some point? I mean, nobody knows the answer, but is it really going to happen? Like, even before, I used to say, hey, transactional deals, sure, like PLG that came in, you can automate. Bigger size deal, we still deal with human being. But are we moving toward a direction that we really get rid of like all this human interaction naturally, even out of our control?
I would say no, we're not going to lose human interaction. There's a couple of different philosophies on this, but one, for instance, AI is going to surface what happened, but it's not going to be able to tell you necessarily why it happened. Now, maybe future state, it could, and it can talk about win rates dropping, but it's not going to tell you when a rep is losing confidence. It's not going to be able to fully analyze sentiment in a call or truly feel. AI doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have emotions. People do. So it goes back to authenticity. So AI is going to replace manual tasks. It's going to continue to show up in ways where it's going to accelerate our productivity. And all of those things are great. We should be embracing that. If you're in enablement and you're not embracing AI, that's a problem. People that actually embrace AI and get good at leveraging it in the ways that it drives productivity, those will be the enablers or the leaders that will be successful, because it's not going away. And I think let's just talk about this in terms of like the industrial revolution. I mean, the world is going to continue to evolve. People were worried when, hey, what do you mean? We're going to have automobiles. Well, we have horses and we have wagons. There will be a reason and a transformation at different points over the course of the years. Finding ways to embrace those changes and use whatever change, if it's AI right now, use it in a meaningful way. That still is going to be the best use case. But people are still at the heart of every interaction. I mean, we're not going to get away from communicating with each other. We're just going to get better at automating. We're going to get better at driving productivity using AI as a accelerator. Those are all good things.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails? These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai.
I would say on the flip side, there is a detriment to potentially any organization that fully embraces the idea that everything should be automated, that people are okay with only communicating with an AI agent. Again, there's times when that's great. Perfect example, I'm a big Delta airline person. I love being able to go online to my chat functionality, and I love being able to just use that quickly to do a quick update. I want to change a flight, whether it's in my app or on my computer. Those are great use cases, but there are times when it cannot help me. And I do need to get on the phone with the Delta agent, and I need them to assist. I don't ever see that part of the people aspect going away. And I think it would be really unfortunate just for humankind in general if it does.
This is really funny, I have to say, Terry. I'm traveling around the world with my dog, with my wife. And you mentioned about like a very, very relevant use case. You call the airline. Yes, if you have the chat functionality, you go and change it, right? It doesn't matter. You want to change the time or whatever. But I'm taking my dog with me. He's part of my family. I'm worried about him 24/7. I want to get someone on a call to check that flight, tell me exactly if the pressure is checked,
Right.
if they have ventilation, if everything is set. And if I go to the airport, I'm not going to wait and make the animal wait for a couple of hours. So to your point, like we have to shift as a species if we see those massive crazy ideas that hey, with no interaction, it means like we are changed. We are not the same human beings that we know. But to your point, look at all the revolutions, look at all the transformations over the years. You're still here, still human, you still want the connection. So I'm with you.
Yes.
All right. My last question, Terry. Yes. Look, you're a great leader. You've been around for the longest time, and you work with a lot of legendary folks If you could bottle one belief or behavior from the OGs and yourself included and pass it to the future leaders, what would it be?
Very easy answer for me. Authenticity and transparency. At the core of leadership is authenticity and transparency. If you as a leader are genuine in your communication and candid about both your successes and your challenges, you will build trust beyond anything that you've ever seen in your teams. You're going to help empower your teams in a safer space to say that it's okay to not know all the answers. You're going to allow them to feel confident to speak up about ideas they have that maybe they don't think are smart. When you lead with authenticity, you truly inspire confidence in other people, and you are creating a space that can accelerate transformation and meaningful change much faster than any other style of leadership. Because then it's not about just demanding results from your teams. You're actually leading by example, you're rolling your sleeves up, you're driving with credibility and conviction, you're aligning strategy, real world execution, and going back to what I said before, you're really truly getting out of the boardroom and into the trenches and asking that question of why, and then truly listening to the insights that come from those individuals. That's where you're moving from more of an activity to truly an outcome. And then initiatives are really being tied directly to revenue, to growth, to retention, etc. And so again, I think if I'm going to really, really boil it down, one of the great lessons that I learned was leadership's not measured by how busy you are, by how many programs you launch, enablement, how many certifications happen. You are measured as a great leader by the tangible, positive change you create. And when you align your work with outcomes that truly, truly matter to the organization, and you do it with that authenticity and that transparency, you're not just earning a seat at the table anymore. You're redefining what that table looks like. And that is the key to being an effective leader.
I love it. And sometimes, even if you don't hear it from others, you know it because many other, I would say, stakeholders, like even your maybe reps, like they tell you, like you really changed my perspective about everything.
Yeah, and I tell you that there's no greater compliment. When I've been asked before, how do you know that you made an impact in an individual's life, whether that's at work or otherwise? It's when they come back to you and they say those things, or where you when you watch them from afar and you see them continue to accelerate in their professional career growth, and you have those conversations and they say, hey, I learned this from you. There's nothing more rewarding, and personally it's just what continues. You asked at the beginning, what drives me to stay in the space? Because when I see that the work that I do, and philosophically the way that I lead teams, when I see that that's being actually translated and adopted and helping other people become better, whether it's growing in their career or just better as a human being and helping organizations become better, man, that's so rewarding. And that's the true leaders that I still today. I did a post not too long ago all about just reflecting on the great leaders I've had in my life. And I mean, I could have gone on and on, but I think I acknowledged probably 25 at least different leaders that I can very specifically recall situations where they changed how I was thinking, or they empowered me to think differently about myself, or challenged me to take that risk like we talked about earlier. So I want to be like that. I want to continue to do that for organizations and for people.
It's really beyond even hearing. This is what I'm hearing from you. It's even beyond just hearing from someone, although if they might be super genuine. It's the fact that you can watch someone grow.
Yes.
That changes you as a human being and your perspective about life. You can bring it with you. It's always with you. It's not something that you can measure by, to your point, how many programs I ran. Who cares?
And that's the truth, because again, at the end of the day, your business is about your people. The people are the ones that are driving the change in the organization. So if you believe that just changing a process is going to actually solve a problem, a business problem, I would challenge you to think differently about that. What is it within the context of your people that needs to change? Do you have the right people on the team? Are you leading them with that kind of authenticity and transparency that's needed to help drive the change management to get those business outcomes? That's a different conversation. And so making sure that you're looking at it from that lens is so important.
I love it. Teri, thank you very much. I
Yes.
really enjoyed this conversation. I love your energy. I'm always crazy and all over the place. I'm calm. See, I'm sitting like a good salesman, try to listen more than anything else because I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Well,
taking the time.
absolutely. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Same. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.